30, two-thirds of the world population, that's 5 billion people, will live in a city, presenting countless global challenges affecting urban inhabitants and the wider environment. What's your take on this?
Well, my take is that it's a fantastic business opportunity for those who are in any type of development sector, from the architects to the town planners to the contractors to people who just add value to the urban development, especially if they are involved in the sustainability aspect of it, because this is now the new buzzword in business. This is now the new buzzword generally, just in development. It has to be done sustainably. It can't be just done in a way that will wreck the very environment. Remembering that the word environment is actually just a short word to encompass what it really is, and that is our life support system. You know, everything that keeps us alive, it comes from the environment. If the environment is not healthy, we cannot be healthy. And this is what we're seeing in this massive urban development that is going on, that has been in the past not done on a sustainable way. So it's a great opportunity for young people and even the not so young to now start to learn how to do things in a sustainable way, because population is growing, it's growing massively, almost exponentially, and people have to live somewhere, so they're going to develop their abodes for where to live. But it has to be done in a sustainable way. It has to be done in harmony with nature. It has to be done in a good way for the environment to be able to continue with its job, which is to supply our essential life support systems.
All right, Desmond, glad to have you on board once again. I've always been looking forward to this discussion. I would like you to paint for us a picture of what a sustainable city should look like. What are the features? What are the things that a sustainable city should have, or cities should have? I would like you to paint that picture for our viewers to really have a proper understanding of what we're talking about when it comes to sustainable city.
That is, in fact, the key question. You know, what are we talking about? What does it mean? Well, the picture behind me is a good example, except that it is actually just a picture. And if you're in a real sustainable city, what would be behind me is maybe just a window, and outside the window, you would see these green edifices, massive trees, and so on and so forth. And in some cities in the world, they have made sure that they maintain green space. It's always a challenge, because you can imagine cities like New York, cities like London, where the value of the real estate is some of the highest in the world. They have huge parks. They have Central Park in New York. They have Hyde Park, Regent's Park in London. And in fact, London is actually one quarter green space. Yes, one quarter of London, UK is actually green space. And this helps tremendously to give it that sustainability adaptation. It helps it to be able to be called a sustainable city. Green space, it's one of the key elements. And you just have to sacrifice the economic gain for the gain of being able to make the place healthy and make the environment conducive for supporting healthy life. But that's just one aspect of it. Okay, very, very key, very, very important. You got to have the green space. You know, nature has been doing this for eons upon eons upon eons. Nature is in harmony with herself, and it's, you know, a circular system, a circular system. What goes up eventually comes down. It goes into the ground. and it supports those things which will come up out of the ground again. A circular, sustainable system. Okay, so that's your green space. Okay, but apart from that, apart from that, in the construction industry, like I mentioned a bit earlier, you have to be using materials that have low carbon footprint. Okay, a classic example is the way we produce our cement these days. Okay, cement, to be able to be effective the way we produce it, requires tremendous amounts of heat, tremendous amounts of mining, and so on. And this has a negative impact on the environment because it is not done in a way that is sustainable. It's not done in a way that is environment friendly. So it has a very negative impact. It has what they call a high carbon footprint. What are we talking about? We're talking about something that emits a lot of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. And this carbon dioxide that's going into the atmosphere has actually brought planet Earth to a critical junction. It has brought humanity into a crisis. It's brought humanity into an unprecedented situation. The example of that is that July 2023 was recorded as the hottest year ever recorded in human history. And 2023 itself looks as if it's going to be the hottest year, if not amongst the hottest years, which have all taken place in the last 10 years. Scientists warned us that this is what would happen if we continue polluting the atmosphere with millions and millions of tons of carbon dioxide. So, when you're producing your cement for your buildings in your city, if the cement has a high carbon footprint, that is, in the production process, you're producing massive amounts of CO2. This is not sustainable, and we cannot continue that way. Likewise, energy systems that are used for bringing light and power into the urban area, they also must now start having low carbon footprint. Again, what are we talking about? We're talking about what do we burn or what do we do to produce the energy that gives us our light, our heating, our cooling, and so on. If it is just based on burning fossil fuel, that is oil, petrol, or derivatives of oil, that is petrol, diesel, and even gas to an extent, especially also coal, then this also adds a lot to the carbon footprint and also causes a lot of toxins to be in the city. And that's one of the reasons why, if you check medical records from hospitals, you'll find that in the urban areas, the hospitals there have a lot of cases that are linked to unhealthy atmosphere, lung diseases, and cancer, and so on, as opposed to people who are living in the rural areas. So, reducing your energy for your city has to have a low carbon footprint. Those are two of the, or three of the major issues in terms of what you need to do to make your city sustainable. There are many more, but maybe you want to discuss other aspects of it.
Yeah, definitely we have to discuss other aspects. But what you just described is the volume of environmental air pollution in urban areas, right? So let's talk about combating it. How do you combat environmental pollution in urban areas, since we are talking about sustainable cities? Now, I see that backdrop, your picture with lots of trees. Would that be one of the ways you can combat air pollution?
Absolutely, absolutely. Because, we just take nature, we take the trees very, very much for granted. But if we analyze the value that these incredible, miraculous aspects of the miracle of creation, if we analyze the value that they give, it is astounding. And it is cause for humility and reverence to the whole miracle of creation. The trees are absorbing our carbon dioxide, which all of us give off. And in return, they are emitting oxygen, without which we cannot survive for 5, 10 minutes maximum. Wow, our most essential commodity is coming from the trees, but they're also filtering particulates that could be in the atmosphere from the various polluting activities that we're perpetrating into the atmosphere. They absorb a lot of these particulates as well. So they also clean the air and they vaporize the atmosphere as well. Forests do wonderful things in terms of transmitting this vapor so you can have rainfall that will continue to fall inland and inland. So every major city should actually be close to some kind of woodland or some kind of little forest. In some places, they have tiny forests right in the middle of the city, which is what we have at our Lufasi Nature Park after Aja, a agroforestry farm that was converted into a park. It's a tiny patch of forest, but it does wonders for the atmosphere. And developers are so anxious to build their estates around our park because it adds tremendous value to the estates that they are building. So definitely the green spacing, the green activity is very, very necessary. Activity in the sense of planting green and also encouraging people, even if you don't have much space, put a few trees, make sure you have a few plants in your compound. Don't just concretize the whole compound. I know it's convenient because you don't have to be cutting the hedges or cutting the grass and so on, but it's good for your health. Make sure you have green space inside your compound and a few small trees. You can even put trees that will give you fruit. You can put pawpaw, you can put different types of small trees that will give you fruit. And if you don't have a compound, you don't have a garden, well, I'm sure you will have a balcony and you can put flower pots on your balcony. And if you don't even have the balcony, you at least should have a window ledge and you can put little pots or little jam jars, little jars on your window ledge and plant little things there. So green, 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 that is very, very important to make the urban space healthy. But apart from that, the main ingredient for us to have this sustainability, to have this healthy lifestyle, it comes from our minds, it comes from our thinking. We have to reorientate our focus, we have to reorientate our thinking into realizing our constitutive role as the most advanced, the most developed species on this earth with this incredible brain capacity. Our role is to be caring for the creation. And this is not me talking. I am not qualified to say that, although it is very logical. This is direct quotation from scriptural injunctions. All the major scriptures of this world, particularly, especially in Nigeria, the Holy Bible, the Holy Quran, or in other parts of the world, the Bhagavad Gita, the Jewish scriptures, all the major scriptures emphasize that the role of the human being is to do what? Replenish the earth. We are caliphs, we are stewards of creation. And it is quite logical that we should be injuncted to replenish our life support system. So we need to get that into our minds. And sometimes it's a challenge because the desire to maximize your profit is a natural desire. We all want to have a good life. We all want to be able to give ourselves the things that will make our life comfortable. And these things don't always come so easy, so cheap. However, you cannot continue to put profit ahead of people and planet. And this has been the challenge. This is what is going on. We have maximized the profit margin, the profit desire to such a high degree that we are even ready to compromise good health. We're ready to compromise people's good health and good well being. This is what is going on all over the world, not just here in Lagos or in Nigeria. And now the United Nations and the big top thinkers, especially amongst the hierarchy of the scientific community, the major geologists, the climatologists, the space research people who are able to see the earth from a different perspective, they are all telling us that we can no longer We're going down a pathway that will lead to catastrophic consequences, and we're already seeing the indications of that. We haven't reached the edge of the cliff yet, but we need to slow down. And the Secretary General of the United Nations is telling us that we're not slowing down, that we're heading towards a cliff which will give us catastrophic consequences, and our foot is still on the accelerator. But good people are now urging us human beings to have a renewal of our minds, a change of attitude, where we will put people first, and then the planet, and then, of course, the profit can come. After all, is that not the primary injunction of any scripture that is worthwhile calling itself a scripture? That we should love our God and love our neighbor. And how can we be profound or professing to be expressing love for our neighbor if we're wrecking our life support system? So it's a matter of attitudinal change. Humanity has come to a very, very interesting time in its evolution, whereby we now have to change our attitude
All
and have
right.
a far more caring attitude towards each other and do what is right in terms of our development, especially the urban development. We got to do the right thing. We got to make sure that we are nurturing nature, even in the middle of the city. And the things that we're using to construct our homes, to construct our abodes, and so on, these things have to be acquired in a sustainable way, not in a way that is damaging to the environment, not in a way that is harming nature, harming the environment, which
All
is
right,
our very
Desmond.
life support system.
Sorry to butt in. Let's talk about the issue of climate change now. You agree with me that is a reality we have to live with. Now, but I need you to talk about how much of threat or challenges this will pose to the plan to urban sustainability.
Yeah, climate change is a it's a massive challenge. It's a massive challenge. Let's take the example of Lagos State alone. Okay, geographic location of Lagos, huge, long coastal area. Okay, um, a lot of Lagos has the ocean on one side and has lagoons on the other side with streams running through it. Lagos is a very low-lying terrain. In some areas of Lagos, it's almost below sea level. It's low-lying. Where we are in Lekki, Victoria Island, so many parts of Lagos is low-lying. A lot of swampy areas, a lot of mangroves, and so on. Okay? Now, climate change is causing extra heating. Okay? It's global warming that is actually causing the climate change, to put it more precisely. Okay? We're heating up the planet beyond its average temperature, beyond its time honored normal temperature. Okay, the planet has been operating like this for eons and eons and eons because of this fixed temperature that it has. It doesn't go too low, averagely, it doesn't go too high. You as a human being, if you're feeling very, very hot and you take a temperature and it's high, you know it's a symptom of sickness. Okay? So what we are doing is we're causing sickness to the planet. We're disturbing its capacity to be able to maintain life as we know it in the long term. In the short term, we're getting things like ice caps melting. Okay, there's areas of this planet that have millions and millions of square meters or square kilometers of ice. Okay, and it's been there for from time immemorial almost. But because of this global warming that is causing the climate change, it's also causing the oceans to heat even more than the atmosphere, and the ice caps are melting. And when those ice caps, when they melt, the water goes into the ocean and it makes the ocean rise. If you see the scenario on Lagos coastline right now, you know that from Okoafa all the way down past Lafiaji and down the coast. In the last 2 months only, we have lost in some areas 22 feet, okay, of coastline. to the ocean, totally eroded. In the last 10, 15 years, we've lost in some areas almost 150 meters. Thousands and thousands of coconut trees that were lining our coast have been washed away totally. Okay? And meanwhile, you're getting more flooding coming in from the lagoons because the amount of water that is being released upland is increasing because the rain is increasing. And that is just a manifestation of simple science that you learn in your mother's kitchen. You know, when you apply heat to water, the water evaporates. More heat, more evaporation, more rain. Global warming is causing this situation. Places like Lagos are under a very severe risk unless the necessary measures are taken to curtail this global warming and to adapt to the climate change situation that we're already in, which means protecting our coastline. We saw an example of that protection with the Eco-Atlantic development, which protected Bar Beach. Bar Beach was getting washed away. The whole Victoria Island would have been underwater now if this protective measure had not been put in place. But it needs to be extended all the way down our coast in order to protect us from one of the most immediate threats of this climate change. Oh, and as if that wasn't enough, that's just the coast here, Lagos. What of in the north? The desert is moving in relentlessly, relentlessly, because water holes have been dried up. Too many of the trees there have been cut, and the rain is not falling the way it used to be. Again, another symptom of the climate change, the global warming. And as that desert moves in, the implications are very, very terrible because people who live there for generations and generations can no longer find a decent livelihood in that location. So this is yet another symptom of this climate change. And it's like nature telling humanity that, look, you're doing this to me. I must give it back to you. You know, one thing I learned as a farmer was that when you plant cassava, you know, go harvest cocoa, yam, whatsoever you do, you shall surely reap the consequences. Again, this is scripture talking to us. You know, it's be not deceived. God is not mocked. Whatsoever you sow, you shall reap. And we are sowing this negativity into nature. So she's obliged to give it back. And that's why at our Lopasi Park, we have a motto. And that motto is loving nature. When you
Loving
come
nature.
there, you just chill and you love nature. And in order to be loving nature, you have to have a loving nature, like you
Absolutely.
two wonderful presenters on this program.
Thank you so much. So let me come in here, Desmond. You said you can't plant cassava and expect to reap cocoyam, right? Let's talk about land reclamation. Well, Femi and I talked earlier on about rural-urban migration and how there's population explosion and how cities have to be expanded. And now we're talking about sustainable cities. Land reclamation, does it pose a threat to sustainable cities?
A massive, massive threat if it is not done in the right way. Because we have to look at, you know, what are we doing? Okay, land reclamation. So what does that mean? That means we're reclaiming land. Okay, reclaiming it from what? Okay, from the mangrove area, from the muddy area, sometimes known as poto. And maybe that's part of the challenge because when we think of poto, it sounds like something that has no value. It's just, it's just mud. It's just, which one did that? Poto. It is actually one of the most valuable aspects of the ecosystem. Again, another aspect of the miraculous nature of creation. This so-called poto, known as the mangrove. Oh, what does it do? So many things. It absorbs excessive rain because times will come during the course of the years where one year we'll have a heavier rainfall than some of the previous years. This is some of the natural cycles that the earth goes through. You have your El Nino, you have your La Nina, slight cooling, slight heating, a natural cycle that occurs on 3, 4 year, 5 year cycles. But the mangroves are constructed, or they are there in such a way that they can actually absorb excessive water that comes in. And not only do they absorb this water and prevent flooding to the slightly higher areas, but they also clean the water. And apart from cleaning that water and purifying it, the mangroves themselves are a wonderful, wonderful habitat for breeding of crustaceans and other aquatic fauna. A lot of the fish that we catch in our lagoons and even in the ocean, they actually come into the mangroves to lay their eggs, and that's where the spawn, that's where it hatches. So they play this wonderful role of nurturing fauna in the mangrove area. And also, when we're talking of this carbon footprint, the CO2, the mangroves are one of the most effective sequesters of CO2. They bring down a lot of carbon dioxide that is emitted, naturally. As you said, mammals give off CO2, and a lot of things in nature absorb it. Mangroves are one of the great absorbers of CO2. So when we now reclaim this mangrove, what we're doing is we're destroying its capacity to offer the natural ecosystem services that it offers, which we have just listed. We're destroying that capacity because we want to have our development. And the use of that terminology for that is questionable, because how can it really be development if you're destroying the life support system capacity of one of the aspects of the miracle of nature? Remember, this planet is a miraculous entity, and you just have to compare it to the hundreds of millions of other planets that have now been observed, through our space traveling and through our space observation. And all the indications are, so far, this is the only one that has the capacity to support life. So it is definitely miraculous. So can you call it development when you're wrecking the life support capacity of this miraculous planet? So yeah, so the reclamation is, it can be done but it has to be done very, very carefully. And when you do it, make sure that you
All
at
right,
least
Desmond,
are
we're due
replacing
for a
some of
break.
the important aspects that the mangrove can give, like the drainage. Make sure you have really, really good drainage canals in place in order that at least the water that comes in through the heavy rains can be taken out and evacuated to the lagoons. There's a lot of haphazard mangrove sand filling that's going on in this location. I've spoken to fishermen, to people who have been supporting their lives for, for generations from fishing
Desmond, if you
in the
can hear me,
lagoons, and they
we're
say
due
that
for
the
a
amount of
break
fish
now. If you
has
can hear
dropped
me, Desmond.
drastically, because also the dredging of those lagoons causes another set of problems again. So none of these sand filling or reclamation should be done without a serious environmental impact assessment giving it approval for it to be done.
All right, Desmond, that was a nice submission from you. We're due for a break now. We're coming back to you to have more discussion. Just stay there, Desmond. We're going on a short break now, and when we return, Desmond is still with us. He's still going to talk about the plan to sustain urban city. Stay with us. All right, glad to have you join us on Early Exchange. And we've been looking at sustainable cities. And our guest today has been Maja Kodumi. It's been doing justice to that. Vivian, earlier Maja Kodumi talked about the need to address the issue of transport system, which I'm still going to put you to him when he comes on board. You have a situation in Lagos where you have the transport facilities being overstretched because of the population. Okay, let me put that to Maja Kodumi. Is ready. Desmond, glad to have you join us once again on Early Exchange.
Pleasure to be here.
All right, let's look at the issue of transportation. You agree with me that there's no plan to have a sustainable cities without looking at the issue of transport holistically. You have a situation in Lagos. I would like you to make reference to Lagos, where you are presently. I would like you to talk about the situation in Lagos, because when you're looking at the concept of sustainable cities, the issue of transport has to be addressed, because the 75% of carbon monoxide pollution come from motor vehicles. What's your reaction to this?
No, that's a very, very good point. The reality is that not just the carbon dioxide that comes, it's also toxic. If you can't lock yourself in the garage and close the doors and the windows and then turn on the engine of your car, you won't walk out of that garage alive, you know? So it's something that has to be addressed. And we need to ask ourselves the question of, why hasn't this been addressed a long time ago? Not just in Lagos, globally. Why have we continued to allow ourselves to be addicted to this poisonous substance, which is, it's quite an efficient fuel. There's no doubt about that. When you burn the product of oil, it gives off, energy which can be translated into locomotive power, into locomotion, quite effectively. It's an efficient fuel, but it's toxic. It's deadly. It'll kill you. Ah, God forbid. If I brought a generator into your room there, into your studio, would you and Vivian stay there? In fact, I couldn't do it. Vivian would deal with me. The kind of Bianca slap that she would slap on my face if I brought a generator there. It's deadly. It's toxic. So yeah, definitely there has to be changes, and we're so excited to see what has just recently happened in Lagos with the blue line, the blue railway line, which is the logical way to have urban transport anyway. There's no major urban city that has even half the population of Lagos that doesn't transport most of its population by rail. And finally, Lagos is doing that. But I'm particularly excited because that blue rail line, is actually an electric line. So it's an electric rail. So the motors themselves do not produce much poison at all. However, we need to actually go and put our focus on how do they generate that electricity. It has to be generated with cleanest substance possible, and we're going to insist that the blue line should be having its electricity generated from, at the very least, gas engines, okay, gas generators, which are a lot cleaner. And eventually, we might have to go and do some demonstration, like what we've done in different parts of the city for different causes. There's a few coming up soon with the Nigerian Conservation Foundation. We're going to be doing some demonstrations. We at Lufasi have done demonstrations for climate. We've done demonstrations for beach protection, and we might have to go and do demonstration for the blue line. I might have to go and tie myself to the line and insist that start producing the electricity for this blue line with clean energy. And I'm ready to make that kind of sacrifice. I know they won't run over me. At least I hope not. And I hope I'll time myself in such a way that the electric rail will not shock me. But, we need to take very firm, assertive action, because we can no longer continue down this trajectory whereby, as you so rightly said, a massive amount of the pollution that the urban center is creating is coming from our transportation system. And the transportation system is running on deadly toxic substances that produce terrible atmosphere. So definitely that has to be changed. But also what has been done in some other cities is to encourage a lot more use of things like the bicycle. Now you can't just, it's difficult to ride bicycle on Lagos Street because you don't have bicycle lanes. But when we're developing new areas, especially the Lekki area, we should try to encourage that. And definitely, within just the next few years, there has to be a transition to gas powered and electric powered vehicles. It is a must. It has to be done. And we will hold the authorities accountable for this. But not only will we hold them accountable, and this is something that we all need to wake up to. Actions beget reactions. This is scriptural injunction. And I as somebody who maybe is responsible for about 30 or maybe even 50 people, the decisions I make can affect their lives. Okay, there's 50 people or so that are working for me, under me. I can affect their lives. But as a leader in government, and you make a decision that can affect the lives of millions, you have to be very, very sure for the integrity and sanctity of your spirit soul that those decisions you make affect the lives of those people very, very well. Because if it affects their lives negatively and impacts negatively upon them, this burden comes upon you. Otherwise, the scriptures are not telling us the truth. And I can never accept that. I know that the scriptures are telling us the word of God Almighty, who says that you reap what you sow. So, the leaders, we are appealing to you for our sake, but also for your sake, because life is a continuum. You're just here in this physical body temporarily. Your spirit soul will still be going somewhere, and what you do here will determine to a great extent where it will go. So do not continue to allow us going down this trajectory of using poisonous, toxic substances to pollute the atmosphere for transportation. Clean energy, electric buses, electric cars, electric trains, at the very, very least, as a transition process, those ones that are powered by compressed natural gas. Thank you. And I hope to see you guys riding a bicycle sometime soon. I'm going to check on you.
All right, we'll see about that. So there is no way you talk about sustainable cities without talking about urban planning. So we are smoothly delving into that subtopic. What does it mean to you, urban planning?
Yeah, again, it means really sitting down and making the right decisions. And this is where we can actually get what we need out of the
No,
sustainability
I was here.
factor, because there, there has to be architects, city planners, people who understand this whole thing. There has to be people that are empowered to sit down and draw up the plans for the urban areas. And then once the plans have been drawn up and have been approved, they must be adhered to. And this is obviously a major challenge that we are having. You can see it manifesting itself already in Abuja, where the new minister is having all kinds of headaches and nightmares about what he's going to have to do to ensure that Abuja gets back to its original plan. Although I don't know if it's correct, I heard that if he starts to demolish all those things that are not in the original plan, he might end up having to take a bulldozer to the villa, and I don't think that would go down very well. But that's just a rumor. I don't know if that's true, but but he's obviously having tremendous issues. Likewise in Lagos, people were allowed to develop in areas where there was no indication for development in the plan. And there's a reason for having these plans. But there's no point having your urban plan and then not sticking to what the plan requires. This is a total contradiction. And we need to really, snap out of this type of nonsense, this type of rubbish of, just contradicting ourselves and making fools of ourselves. We have to snap out of that. The plans can be drawn up. We have the right people. There's no doubt about that. We have all the capacity to do that. We have top architects, we have great civil engineers, we have city planners who have been drawing up good plans and they are still trying to draw up good plans. But the plans must be adhered to. And those who don't adhere to them will have to pay the price because they're causing major, major problems. So, yeah, have your urban planning, but by all means, stick to it. Stick to what you have planned and don't just go and ignore it. It's totally unconscionable and totally unacceptable because you're causing major, major issues. But you're building on drainage areas that are supposed to be there for the water to pass out, just because it looks a little bit plain for a while. No, 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 no. We have to change our attitudes, and that's why we're calling for an actual renewal of our mind and adaptation of our consciousness to a greater thinking process.
All right, Desmond, you have a situation here in Africa, or we're quite peculiar here, where there's a disparity between the master plan and what is obtainable. Talk to us. What do you think is largely responsible for this development?
Well, I think it's just, our own attitudes.
Desmond,
The
if you can
master
hear
plan
me,
is not that.
I'm trying to ask of your thought about the development of this trend in this part of this world, whereby you have a master plan, yet you have disparity between the master plan and then what is obtainable. I'd like to have your thought in this regard. What do you think is largely responsible for this?
Yes, well, it's again, it's just it's irresponsibility that is responsible for this. How can you have a master plan? The master plans are drawn up, as I alluded to earlier, by people who have the knowledge. They have the requisite knowledge. They have a deep understanding of the technicalities of how you develop urban areas. Technicalities of where you have your green space, particularly your green space, where you have your transportation systems, where you're going to put the roads, what type of roads you're going to put in place, what type of other transportation systems you're going to put in place. Is it going to be railways? Is it going to be tramways? Is it going to be waterways? Where are they going to be running to from where? Where are you going to have your major sort of commercial areas? Where are you going to have your residential areas? Where are you going to have your market areas? Are you going to have urban spaces for developing agriculture? All these things go into the master plan. And then to just ignore to a great extent the master plan is the height of irresponsibility. It is totally unconscionable. And, we need to question ourselves that, why are we so easily capable of doing this? It is a destructive attitude and it will only bode, pain and problem for us in the future. It already is. We can't have a master plan and then go against it. And this is a wake up call. We're actually we're actually undergoing a wake up call globally. Humanity is undergoing a wake up call. Nature is blowing very loud alarm bells at humanity and telling humanity that you can no longer continue on this pathway. And a good example of it is this issue of the master plan. So you have good people, or even some people that are not so good, but they have some good intentions, and they come together and they look at all the indices of the development of that urban area, what's going to be most beneficial for the largest group of people, and they eventually come up with a plan for that area. Then people who are maybe not quite as good as them, or even people who have some goodness, but they have maybe too much greed and selfishness in their hearts, in their consciousness. And they're thinking, this master plan, I can make some extra money here. Oh, this particular green space that's there. What is all this? If we get rid of that green space, it's going to be some good profits for me. After all, the SUV that I was able to buy from the last thing I did that was against the law is already a bit old. And when I went to the Owambe, I wasn't able to spray in dollars like I usually do. I have to get a new SUV. Then I'll go to the Owambe and I'll be spraying $100 so that they'll know that yes, I am here, I am arrived, this is me, ego and pride. And it comes to a fall. Pride comes before a fall. And this is what nature is telling us very, very loudly, especially in Nigeria. There's something special about this area, this Niger area, this Nigeria. There's something special about this place because everything is exaggerated. Yes, yes. The intellectual capacity of our people, it is very, very high. Just give them a little bit of education and you will see them excel tremendously. There are so many stories of when some of our founding fathers went to universities overseas for the first time. There they were studying in a foreign language, and some of them excelled so greatly that there were some funny people in some of those universities. Some of the lecturers said, no, how can this person coming from Africa like this and do better than all of our students? Yes, because we have that mental capacity, we have the physical capacity. Who are the people that are winning in sports all over the world? There are people who came from Africa. There are people with Afrogenous links in their DNA systems. What of the music? What of the arts? We have so much tremendous capacity here. So everything is like it's exaggerated here. So as nature is warning humanity all over the world, in Nigeria of a place, the warning is becoming even more stringent, even louder, that you have to change your attitudes. Your selfishness, your greed, your self-centeredness, this attitude of me, myself, I can do what I want. I can change it. A master plan. I beg, we'll get rid of that green space, even that lagoon area, even that space that's meant to evacuate the water. We'll get rid of it. I beg. Yeah, there's money for me, and I can buy the new SUV. Yeah, yeah, yeah. But is that what you're going to drive to try to get through the gates of heaven? So it's a call to wake up. Nature is just telling us that we have to change our ways, that we have to wake up to the new reality, which is that she's not tolerating our nonsense anymore. Wake up, humanity.
Now, as we wrap this up, Desmond, you talked earlier on about the mangrove, which you called poto poto. It's very rich in periwinkle, and you have women go there to pick this periwinkle and sell. So it serves as, a source of livelihood for some of these women. But when it's reclaimed now to build houses, I mean, their source of income is destroyed, right? But then when you're talking about sustainable cities, you have three major aspects: the economic, the social, and the environmental. How do you merge these three together so that it works seamlessly without any suffering at the expense of the other?
That is the key, because it's how you start it that is going to continue and will determine how it ends. So it has to be started well. And again, we're going back to the master plan. You got to bring the right kind of strategies. You got to bring the right sort of people and more consultation with the local communities as well. Don't just assume that you know everything. You have the data. How many people are actually relying on those periwinkles? How many people are relying on the other aspects that come from those mangrove areas? Have you discussed with them? Have you found a way, discussing with scientists and agronomists on how you can still preserve those periwinkle patches? And I know why you particularly are talking about periwinkles because I heard from good information that you're actually a periwinkle specialist. So you cook very beautiful, fantastic periwinkles. I've never tasted it, but one day, by God's grace, I'll taste your periwinkle. But in the meantime, we really, really need to get the right people in place for this master plan. People who understand the privilege of the job description, which is you are a civil servant. That is, you are there to serve the civilian population. What a privilege that is, that you are endowed with that capacity or that position to serve multitudes of people, to bring goodness, to bring help, to bring hope into the lives of multitudes of people. What a privilege. Because if you do this well, if you do this well, it comes back on you. It comes back for you. It elevates your spiritual status so that you can go to a far, far better place than where you came from. So the good thing is to plan it properly. That's the really good thing that you need to do, is to ensure that it's very, very well planned and take into consideration the various services that these various aspects of the location that you want to move into, uh, those services have to be maintained. They have to be maintained. The flood release capacity of the mangroves, they have to be maintained. If it's a drier area, okay, that dry area, is it prone to erosion? If it's prone to erosion because you're going to remove some of the trees, you better make sure that in those areas that are prone to erosion, you keep the vegetation there because that's what's keeping the soil in place. It's the roots of the vegetation. Another of the services that the trees and the plants give us, apart from the oxygen and the water and the food, they stabilize the soil. So is it an area that is maybe on a sloping trajectory that could be prone to erosion? Well, make sure that you keep your vegetation intact there. So the planning has to go on for quite a while. And then also you can have futuristic thinking. If you're in a place like Lagos, where you know there's a lot of water, these days there's a technology is developed enough to actually put habitats on stilts. In fact, in some places they've been doing it for ages anyway. In Makoko and places like that, they're built on wooden stilts. But you can have it done on far more durable, sustainable type of structures that you will have people actually living on top of the water, but not claiming the water, not claiming the mangrove for where they are. The main thing is it has to be done with the reality in mind that whatever we're developing, whatever we're doing, must be done sustainably. It must be done in harmony with nature, which is our constituted, designated role as human beings. And if we can't live in harmony with nature, then she'll push us aside. Don't be deluded that because we have some little control with our technology over nature, that we can just control her and do anything. Not at all, not at all. When some of those hurricanes were hitting America, a classic example is the Hurricane Katrina, where they lost thousands of lives as a result of this hurricane. They knew when the hurricane would come. They knew exactly where the hurricane would come. And with all the moonwalking, space exploring technology, they were not able to divert the direction of that hurricane by 1 centimeter, and they couldn't slow it down by even half a second. So don't be fooled into thinking that we have that kind of control over nature. We do not. And we need to subject ourselves to her and we need to work in harmony with her. So, in the planning processes, that should be foremost in the minds of the planners that what we're planning, are we planning it in a way that it will be sustainable and harmonious with nature? Or to put it in another way, as we do in the Lufasi Park, which is a wonderful, wonderful spot just after Aja on the Lekki Expressway. Are we doing it in a way that is loving to nature?
Well, this is a good place to land, right? Insightful as usual. Thank you for coming on board Early Exchange. We hope to see you again not too long from now.
My pleasure.
Thank you so
and one
much.
of these days, I'll get to chop your periwinkle.
Absolutely. So we'll take a short break, and when we come back, we will be taking a look at rural migration and challenges. Stay with us. Don't go anywhere.
On social media.